Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another election prediction. This time we have Vice President Kamala Harris up against former President Donald Trump in a new updated matchup because a few months have passed since the last one. So, again, Harris, she frequently underperforms Joe Biden in the polls. She hasn't led Donald Trump in a single poll in a very, very long time. So again, I think Harris is an extreme underdog in this scenario. I think Trump's probably very likely to beat her just with his advantage in the Electoral College and him currently in a deadlocked tie with Joe Biden right now. I think Harris would be a weaker candidate than Joe Biden, that's for sure, just based off the polling we've seen and her constantly being behind in the favorable numbers. But let me just finish up setting all these safe states on each side. Okay, we're going to start off with Iowa and Ohio. These are just very safe red. I think Trump probably takes each of them by 12 points against Harris. I don't really think she stands much of a chance in these very rural states at this point. Just with the white working class trending more and more Republican in these states, I don't think Harris would get enough populist support to really have a chance in both of these two states. So going down to the state of Florida, honestly, it could get to safe red with Harris as the nominee. She could lose a bit more independent voters to Trump, and I actually think it probably will happen. I think Harris would lose Florida by an over 10% margin. But Texas, on the other hand, there is some blue trends here. I think Harris would be able to turn out Latino voters and black voters in this state to prevent Trump from winning it by a safe red margin. So she'll at least keep Texas as a likely red state. Alaska would just be safe red. No real shot there for Harris to do well enough there. In New Mexico, I still think she would do a bit decent here. She would win by a likely blue margin still. In Nevada and Arizona, I just don't think she'll do as well with Biden with independent voters. She doesn't have an incumbency advantage either. So I have Nevada going as a lean red state. And Arizona, I think she'll make it close because Trump isn't really that well liked in the state of Arizona, so I have this as a tilt red state. She'll at least make it competitive, but I still think Trump would narrowly beat her there. In Virginia, even, I think this will go down to only a 4% win for her. So I think she's that weak that we could see Virginia go into a more competitive column here just because she'll lose out on a bit of independent voters. And even Biden, he isn't leading by a lot in Virginia right now. I only have him winning it by like 7. So I think that margin could come down. I have him winning by about 8% last time I checked. Yeah, 8%. So I have Biden winning here by 8, and I think she'll lose about 4% from that margin here just because, again, she isn't as popular or isn't as liked as Biden is in the polls. She's minus 3% from him, from his like favorability number. So I think that'll pretty much trend here to her winning the state of Virginia only by 4.5%, just under a likely margin. Going down to North Carolina, I think she probably ends up losing the state of North Carolina by about 5 percentage points because she'll do a bit worse than Joe Biden here in most states. Even though I think she would do well with black turnout in the state of North Carolina, I just think among independent voters, they'll probably end up going towards Trump instead of her. So I have her losing North Carolina by 5. But I think Georgia, I think she'll do not as bad as North Carolina. She'll get a lot of black turnout here, but those independent voters, again, will probably end up going towards Donald Trump. Moving up to Nebraska 2nd, I think this district, it's just too urban or too suburban, and it's too left trending for Trump to really have a shot here, even against Harris. I think she still ends up winning here. Moving up to New Hampshire, I still think she ends up taking New Hampshire. It's a very college-educated state, and it's just becoming more and more liberal as we go on in the future. Maine, on the other hand, I think it could get a bit more competitive because it isn't as college-educated as New Hampshire is, but I still think she ends up taking Maine at large by a lean blue margin, but she loses Maine second by over 10. So now we're down to these 4 Rust Belt states. Kamala Harris has to sweep all 4 of them. So for Minnesota, even though Biden's only up here by about 2 or 3 points on average, I think Harris would underperform Biden by like a point or 2 in the state of Minnesota. I'd still think she wins Minnesota by a over 1% margin at least. Like 1.5%, I would say she wins it by. But I think it'll get pretty close to how Hillary nearly lost Minnesota back in 2016, just because I just don't see Harris having that Rust Belt appeal that would help her out in these Rust Belt states here, and I think she would probably underperform in Minnesota from Biden's marking batch in 2020. In these next few states, Wisconsin, I just don't think she really has a good shot at winning here. I think independents, again, will probably go to Donald Trump in that scenario. Same with Pennsylvania. I just don't think she'll do well. She isn't really populist. She wouldn't really bring out those white working class voters in this state. But Michigan, I think it'll be one of the closer states. I think she will be able to get decent black turnout in Detroit in the state of Michigan. However, just with the white working class trends here and them getting more and more Republican over time, and her not being as much of a, or not being a seen as more populist type of candidate, I think Michigan would end up going to Donald Trump against her in this state. So I have Trump winning 312 electoral votes to Kamala Harris's 226. Harris is a much weaker candidate than Biden, so she underperforms in a bit more states than him. So I think it'll be a bad idea for Harris to replace Biden on the top of the ticket for the 2024 election if that scenario were to take place. But other than that, this is my take on a Harris v. Trump matchup. Let me know what you think of this video in the comments down below. And let me know if you disagree or agree on this video. I'm interested in hearing your feedback on it. Other than that, thanks so much for watching. I'll see you all in the next one.